Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. In each episode, we invite guests to have honest conversations about their mental health journeys with the goal of destigmatizing mental health within the Asian American Pacific Islander community. Due to the nature of the podcast, we'll be discussing a variety of mental health topics and possibly triggering experiences. While we and the majority of our guests are not trained professionals, we encourage you to practice self-care while listening and seek professional guidance if you or a loved one is in need of support. With that said, let's start the episode.
So I definitely would describe my mental health journey as unique. I think everyone's mental health journey is unique. I haven't, especially I feel like in API families, it's really not discussed as much as in other families, and it's sometimes even hard to get support for it. I definitely feel that my family has been more supportive of me over these past couple of years, especially during the pandemic. But I definitely experienced like the Asian toughness or tough love. So yeah, that's my experience with the mental health.
Hi, my name is Siwoo, and I would describe my mental health journey as a roller coaster because I've definitely had a lot of ups and downs, and I feel like a lot of people say that, but it is true, especially because as a youth and as an AAPI and as someone in school and as a woman, especially this year, there have been a lot of small things and big things within my community, just in between my personal relationships. And there has been recently huge things like Roe v. Wade being overturned. And yeah.
I would probably describe my mental health journey as a journey. I don't really know if there's any other word, but it's been, I guess, very eventful, and I'm discovering new things about myself every day, and I have been for the past years of the pandemic. I do feel like current events have definitely been a big factor in impacting my mental health. Mostly negatively, but I guess sometimes positively as well. But yeah, I just learned new things about myself every day.
Hello, and welcome to the Changing Tides podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Yonemura. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I had an amazing set of guests for this one. Probably the most stressed I've been for an interview because of how smart these individuals are. Genuinely, I didn't tell them before or after we recorded this, but for this group of young adults, I was terrified. I was scared they'd school me on my knowledge of AAPI history, my knowledge of intersectionality with AAPI history, but they were just amazing to talk to, and they amaze me every time I speak to them. My guests for this episode, they are a youth-driven organization that is all about educating other young kids about AAPI history and advocating for AAPI youth, which I think is just an amazing pursuit that they're on. And they do so with such eloquent speaking. And again, I was terrified, but they were great to have on. I got to speak with Mina, Siwoo, and Maxwell of AAPI Youth Rising. So we have AAPI Youth Rising here on the podcast. We have Maxwell, Siwoo, and Mina. Mina is in the middle of transporting, so she'll be joining us in a second on camera. But for now, she's here, just no camera at the moment. But thank you all. I met you, all of you, as well as one other member at the Japanese American National Museum, where you were awarded for Act to Change. You do amazing work, but I want to start by asking, first things first, what is AAPI Youth Rising?
I guess API Youth Rising, I mean, it's a little hard to define, but I guess we're just a group of students, youth-led and youth-founded, trying to make a difference in our communities by taking small actions, and specifically advocating for issues facing AAPI youth, providing a platform for that, and making changes. Yeah.
When was AAPI Youth Rising created? I'll go ahead and ask Max to make it more easy.
Sure. I guess it was founded when the rally in Berkeley was held last spring. So if I don't know if you know about that, but there was a rally for API Rising in Berkeley. There was over like 1,000 people who turned up. It was a great rally. There was great guest speakers and even youth spoke up. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the camera, like, if people are listening not on YouTube and they're just listening on Spotify or wherever it is, you know, I'm talking to middle schoolers here that are just amazing and so well spoken. So, Siwoo, I'm curious, how do all of you know each other, and well, how about the other members as well? Because I know there's many more members in your organization.
For the start, of AAPI Youth Rising, Mina is the founder, and so she asked a group of friends, including me, Charlie, Anna, who are all on the board, to help her, I guess, organize the rally. And so basically, what she did was she just asked her friends to join her group, and obviously they agreed into joining because they were also AAPI. But for people like Max, I think Max he did come to the rally, but he was not participating in organizing it. If I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he was family, friends, or something like that.
Yeah, I think Cooper is the mutual friend between us. Me and Mina.
Yeah. And then most of our members like were usually friends, or we have connections like through family or through like friends of friends, etc. Or just sometimes people email us and ask if they could be chapter leaders. Like for example, we have a couple chapter leaders over the USA who email us and ask if they could be it. So what they do is they promise to teach their school the 1 by 180 pledge, and they give the small presentation that we have to teach schools about API history, but it was just like a brief overview. And so I think in the past, it was more of like a friend thing, and then now we have youth all over the US. So yeah.
Which is amazing. I saw your website that you have people in Massachusetts, even, right? Is that correct? That's unbelievable. And are your other chapters within the same age range as you all as well?
Yeah, so actually, I was in eighth grade, I guess, last year, but we just graduated. Me, Mina, Charlie, Anna, we graduated. And so most of our chapter leaders and members are going to high school or are in high school, but we actually do have a couple members that are way younger than us. So it varies.
Gotcha. I apologize. You are no longer middle schoolers. You are definitely high schoolers ready to take on that next chapter. Regardless, what your work you're doing is amazing. And you did mention the 1 by 180 pledge. Mina, as you said before, you know, AAPI Youth Rising is so many things, but the 1 by 180 pledge was really amazing. That's what I really caught on to when we spoke at Janum. So, um, Mina, if you don't mind, I'd like to call you in and ask, you know, what the 1 by 180 plan is.
Well, I guess the 1 by 180 pledge, the reasoning behind it was we realized that there was a lot of legislative action happening that was providing, I guess, mandates for API history or diverse histories around the country. But a lot of that wouldn't go into effect for years and years down the line. For example, AB 101, a bill we supported last year, passed mandating ethnic studies for the whole state of California in high school as a graduation requirement. And that was amazing. That's an amazing step forward, but that mandate doesn't go into effect, I think in 2029. And a lot of us will be like 21 years old during that time. So, there's a lot to do before then. And so the pledge was basically just to get a direct route to teachers and asking them specifically to teach just one day of API history out of 180 instructional days of the school year, and to just get more awareness out that often there are 0 days of API history or 0 lessons or mentions at all. So, and even us growing up in a pretty progressive area, me
I mean, I've spent my whole life in California, but I haven't gotten nearly as much education about how the United States has treated Asians in America, and any events in history like that. So we wanted to just do something small about it and hopefully raise a bit more awareness. And from that, our newest launcher idea is a lesson we designed that is that one day of AAPI history. And it's about a 1 hour, 45-minute lesson just covering different events that have happened in Asian American history, and also tying that into different stereotypes and myths about the AAPI community, because it's important to do that for context and reasoning behind it and all that. So that's what's going on there. But that's our newest project and what we're all trying to tie into this.
That's amazing, because when I first heard of this, I was like, wow, when I was in middle school, high school, you really don't get that one day of AAPI history. And as you're talking about these stereotypes, especially modern history, if anything, we kind of hear about like the Chinese empires way back, but we don't hear about the modern history of things. So I think the work you are all doing is amazing. And I know you're saying it's direct to teachers, but I'm wondering, do you go in and teach the lessons yourselves?
Yes, we do. We do go in and teach that. We've taught it. Actually, I don't know how many yet, but we've taught it a few online, actually around America, like in New York, Connecticut, different places around there, and a few online and a few in person in the Bay Area and now in Los Angeles. But yeah, we're offering to teach them in person, and
Gotcha. For sure. And thank you. We now have Mina on camera, but thank you all. I mean, of course, we're already going, but it's just great to have us all be able to see one another. So I guess I want to ask this to all of you. I'm going to start with Max and kind of go around. Was there a moment where you realized, wow, my education system does not teach AAPI history? And how did you react to this realization that your ancestral history, your cultural history isn't being taught in your school? So
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think there's been like several moments for me personally. So one of them is like definitely during the pandemic when I started hearing about all these Asian hate crimes. No one in my school really discussed them at all during class or online school, and there wasn't even like any mention of them, at least. So I think that was like really eye-opening for me to see that that was such a big event in American history, and there was very minimal coverage of that in our classes. It was kind of saddening to me, and it really woke me up to what was happening.
I think for me, like Max said, there wasn't really a specific moment, but I feel like there has been multiple times where I realized that a lot of people like really just don't understand a lot about AAPI. They don't even really know what AAPI stands for, etc. And I think the first time, this was when I was 7, and I was really shocked. I still remember it to this day. It was like this girl, I was playing on the playground and she asked me what my name was, and I was like, oh, my name's Siwoo, like, do you want to be friends? You know, I was like a little kid. And she was like, oh, so are you like Chinese? And I was like, no, I'm Korean. And she was like, what's that? And I was like, wow, that is very shocking. And even to this day, when I tell people that I'm Korean, they ask me like, are you North or South Korean? And I'm just like, really, people just aren't educated on Asia in general, and which that just explains more about how they don't know about Asian Americans if they don't know anything about Asians. And so I feel like that was a real shocker for me. And then, yeah, just like not even knowing people's identities, where they're from, like they don't even know geography or like political, I guess, political geography. And a lot of people actually, this goes for not just API, but they don't know the difference between ethnicity, nationality, and race. So yeah, and I think that was the biggest for me, but there are a lot of more events that's happened to me, which made me realize that, wow, people are very ignorant. They're not educated on any of this. And when they are, they're not educated from in schools, they're educated on social media or the internet.
I think the first time I sort of realized that AAPI history was not being taught, or that people were very ignorant about the Asian American community, and there was a lot of misinformation out there, was when I started to learn actually about different events that have happened to the Asian American community and their treatment in the United States and all that, like the Chinese Exclusion Act, Japanese internment camps, the labor movement and Asian Americans' involvement in all that whole thing. I feel like I really started to realize the lack of me learning those when I finally did learn them. And I had to learn them on my own through the internet. And I had to like credit my sources and find all this stuff, but I had to do it all on my own. And my school did not give me any of those resources, which was probably around the time that, yeah, I guess I realized that people, if I didn't learn this and I'm Asian, and I went searching for this, then I know no one else probably has learned this. And again, we're in a very progressive area. So you can only imagine what's happening in other places in the country where, I don't know. So also it's definitely very important also to point out too, I agree with you with the nationality, race, ethnicity thing. I've gotten into multiple arguments about that with my classmates, and it's just ending in confusion because nobody knows what they're really talking about. We're kids, but that education needs to be taught as well.
Thank you all for sharing your personal stories. First, I have to admit, please, I was one of the people that didn't know the difference either. I just learned that difference, and I'm 23 years old. I just learned that difference maybe a year ago. So you are all ahead of the curve, but that's not, as you guys are saying, that's not how it should be. We should all have already known that. And I learned through social media as well, not through school, not through college, not anything. So I'm curious though. I know you're saying that you all grew up in a progressive area, which is great, but I'm curious, what is the diversity of your neighborhoods like? Is it kind of rare to have other Asians, or is it a pretty Asian populated area?
For me, I mean, we all live in different cities. Like we all live in the East Bay. I live in Albany, which is right next to Berkeley. Max lives in Oakland, and Mina lives in Piedmont. So we're all kind of separate from each other. For me, I don't know about those two, but actually there are a lot of Asians in my city, and so it's a lot more common to see Asians than any other community of color. And Asian Americans are the fastest growing minority population in the US. So it's not surprising, but at the same time, I feel like my community in general is just white and Asian. We actually have a lot of immigrants here, like first-gen immigrants, and then people who are visiting from other countries, from Asia, for UC Berkeley, whatever, because there's a village down the city, but I'm not just going to talk about that. But overall, I feel like a lot of Asians, a lot of white people, but then there's a lack of Latinx community members and Black community members or Indigenous in general in my area. In Berkeley, I feel like it's a little better. There are actually a lot of Asians, but then again, a lot of white folks there are still ignorant to a lot of API and API history, culture, etc. So yeah.
For me, I live, the East Bay is very like there are a bunch of little tiny cities and communities that people end up living in. My area is very white. It's probably mostly white, a bit Asian, and almost no Black or Latinx people, but it's a very small area where I am. But I think also your school definitely really depends on that. And I guess me and Siwoo go to the same school, or I guess went to the same school since it's technically last year, but our school was pretty diverse. And the school that I'm going to next year will also be pretty diverse. But a lot of places in America don't have that sort of luxury. And you can argue, oh, it's not that important, but it's very important to have other people within your community around you. And it's very important for anything like that. And I used to live in Pasadena or in LA before, and that was a very white dominated area. Again, a few Asians, but it was fairly white. Yeah.
I guess for me, my neighborhood is predominantly white, but there is a significant population of like Asians. It's a very like family oriented neighborhood, so there's a lot of like families with younger kids. But there is a severe lack of Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities here. So I definitely feel, as Siwoo did, there's only white and Asian people in my neighborhood. So I think there is that lack of diversity in my neighborhood.
Yeah, I appreciate you all giving insight to that because, as Mina was saying, a lot of areas across America, they've like the Asian communities or other BIPOC communities are way lower than where we are in California. So I think that gives insight to the need for the 1x180 pledge, for the type of work that you are all advocating for, because across other states, like we could only imagine what it's like in terms of BIPOC awareness or AAPI history or knowledge or exposure just to other cultures. So considering that you saw this need in the Berkeley East Bay area, I think really speaks to the national need as well.
Yeah, I also visited, this kind of on topic, but I just got back from a trip to Tennessee, and then after that I went to Chicago. But Tennessee was very, very not diverse, and I know that is how it is mostly around the country in general. I know that the communities of color, the population is definitely growing. And I know in California, we definitely have a very diverse area, but around the country, it is very non-diverse in many areas.
Definitely. Yeah, I went to school in Chicago for college, and even though it's a big city, it's still not quite as diverse as like most areas in California. So, yeah, as you move around and you experience other areas, you definitely see that difference. Um, so you all kind of mentioned a little bit about the reactions to your own experiences with racism, but there's also this stuff that we hear about in the news. The Asian hate crimes that's been right around the time when your organization started, I believe. So how have your personal experiences or what you hear in the news, how does that impact your mental health? And I'll go ahead and start with Max again.
Yeah, I think it definitely negatively impacted my mental health. I was always thinking, could my parents and grandparents be next? Could they be in the news too? My grandfather lives alone. He is in Oakland, but he lives with a caretaker. We don't really see him that often though. So it was always like a constant state of like fear or this dark cloud hanging over me whenever we would go out to like do anything or walk in our own neighborhood. Yeah.
Mina, how about you?
Well, my mom was coughed at walking down the street in her neighborhood around 2020-ish. And it was some random lady. We didn't know her, but she was I guess she just wanted to show her dislike of Asians, which was a little saddening, especially because it was during the beginning of the pandemic. I had just gone like home, I guess, for online school. And it was very, I guess, a little jarring. Yeah. And I guess my personal experience I want to say it was around a month ago, I guess now. Yeah. Or 2 months ago ish. But a boy told me to go eat dog in my grade. And that was a little, it's not very nice. Yeah. And I've heard many of our classmates saying different, I guess, racial slurs towards different communities of color, and all this hate circling around. It's very stressful. especially because I'm Asian American, I am youth, I'm like 14, and I'm also a woman. So, all those three things, you become very vulnerable and you feel very vulnerable in many areas. And yeah, like just like Maxwell, I've often heard myself thinking like, what if it's my mom next, or my grandparents next, or what even my brother or me next? Like, how is this gonna affect me moving forward, and always just having to be vigilant for my personal safety. It's definitely impacted my mental health pretty negatively in terms of just stressing out about that and thinking about, I don't know, all the recent uptick in hate. And I think there was some sort of shooting in a like a Taiwanese church or something like that down south, only a few like miles away from my grandparents' house. So that was also very jarring for me. But I feel like it's definitely made everything very stressful, and I've had to learn about like how to be safe, I guess, all those things that I didn't really have to think about before as much or worry about as deeply. Yeah.
I think for me, I don't even know where to start on this, but I've had the luxury of being in a city that's pretty safe enough for me to go out on a walk by myself with my dog. But after hearing what happened to Mina's mom, that just made me extremely nervous. And even more watching the news about elderly Asian women, I think it really made me panic. My grandparents and my other relatives live down in South Korea. My mom and I and my dad actually came when I was like 6, 7. And so my parents have an accent, and obviously they're not like 100% fluent in English. And so I think the part that made me like most nervous was when we would go out in public and they would speak in English and their accent is very obvious, or whenever we would speak in our native language. I think that was the part that made me like really nervous, and like subconsciously I kept thinking like just like don't speak. And that, I feel like part of it, I know I shouldn't have felt this, but at that time made me kind of ashamed, at the same time made me embarrassed, and also nervous, upset that I had to deal with that kind of stuff. But at the same time, thankfully nothing physical has happened to my family. I think in the past, my dad has gone through some verbal stuff because of him not being able to speak fluent English. But I think for my mental health in general, it just made me very nervous, like I already said. And I don't know how to explain in other words, very nervous, very nerve-wracking. And even when my parents go out by themselves, like I know very well that my dad and my mom can fend for themselves, but you never know what can happen. And yeah, it's very heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Well, I so much appreciate you all sharing this very, very vulnerable story about, your own individual lives. And I also appreciate you all mentioning some form of intersectionality of how race interacts with gender identity, whether it be your location of where you're located. I think those are a lot of aspects that unfortunately a lot of people don't realize play into the AAPI hate crimes, whether it be age, race, gender. There's so many roles that go into it, and I appreciate you all for mentioning that. And I know that this caused a lot of fear and anxiety for a lot of us. And one of the amazing things where this unfortunate situation is going on to our communities, you all took it and put it into an action, some type of actionable thing moving forward. And a lot of that has to do with, this AAPI Youth Rising. So much of what you guys do has to do with education, hence the 1x180 plan. So I'm curious, where did you start in educating yourselves so that you can go and do the 1x180 plan? So I'll go ahead and start with Mina. Like, where did you start? How like, that's so much history. How did you start this?
I think I was looking for different websites online. Actually, Act to Change was one of the first when we were trying to plan a rally or looking into that. We stumbled upon Act to Change as a big Stop API Hate sort of network type thing. And then I saw their Hate is a Virus toolkit, and that had, I think, different resources on it. And I learned a lot from that one. And I sort of just went around looking for different Asian American history resources. And I was able to find a whole lot online about, and it was pretty accurate information as well and credible sources. And I had a pretty easy time finding it, but I did have to specifically look for it. It wasn't like, I don't know, I just opened my own school textbook and read it. I had to like go hunting for it essentially. But yeah, I was just looking for different resources to educate myself, and some of my friends as well. Yeah.
Siwoo, how about you? I know you were one of the early members as well. So how did you help to navigate this?
I don't even know where to start because I can't remember. There's so much stuff. And actually, one of our members, Anna, she knows a lot more about history, API history than we do because she did a school project on it where she spent like how many hours? Like more than
It was like
80
hours.
80 hours.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but I still feel like I don't really know much. And I know that I can do more. But I think because our group started with education, like I definitely helped, but I feel like our group, like AAPI Youth Rising, helped me educate myself. I think I was educated through it, like reading slides, like putting together the slide, and just listening to videos, watching them while we taught other schools made myself more educated. And there's a lot of more stuff out there, which is kind of sad because I haven't learned about it. I feel like I only know about Vincent Chin, some of the basic stuff like Japanese internment camps and Chinese Exclusion Act, etc. But there's a lot more to learn, and I feel like my education started with the group, which is like I feel half sad about it, but also like half prideful about it, I guess. But yeah.
And Max, I know you were a little bit later in joining the team. So how did you navigate this world of education that your schools didn't necessarily give you?
Sure. So I think I started learning about API history through my parents and asking them questions, especially about my family's background, learning more about my heritage and where my family is from. So that was like the basic level of like your family. And then later middle school is through school projects. Like if the curriculum didn't teach it, it was like I should research it myself and learn about my people's past, such as Chinatowns. So I did a history outline on the Gold Rush and the Chinese Exclusion Act. I also learned and researched about Japanese internment and Vincent Chin in order to educate others about these events. And then when I started learning about the current situation with API hate during the pandemic, I feel like I need to educate myself more. So I did my own research on the internet and stumbled across websites like Stop API Hate and Act to Change. But I also definitely think that API Rising set me on the path to rediscover API history through our work in education and creating a lesson plan.
I don't think you all realize how amazing the work you are doing is. I mean, I'm sure you do. I'm sure everyone always tells you. But I mean, like, to put it into perspective for me, I didn't learn about, I mean, I'm Japanese, so I knew about the internment camps, but my education system didn't teach me that until junior year of high school. I mean, then you all did all this extra work to learn about, everything else with it that you could within AAPI history. And, you at least are taking the initiative to do so. And I don't think that's something that many people do, but kudos to you all, of course. I mean, you took leaps that some people wouldn't have. We're taking a quick break to introduce Anchor, the sponsor of this podcast. Anchor is free, first and foremost, which is amazing. Who doesn't love free? And you can record everything directly into Anchor. It's so easy to use Anchor. That's how you are listening to this podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple, the Anchor website. You're listening to it because I uploaded this podcast episode to Anchor. If you want to start your own podcast, I highly recommend Anchor. It's made this whole process so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now I'm curious about the reaction to your lesson plan. So you said it's about an hour. Was it about an hour and 45 minutes or an hour to 45 minutes?
An hour to 45 minutes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So you do this 1 hour, 45-minute plan. I'm curious about the reactions that you get when you teach these. I'm curious, like, does it change based on the age range that you do it? Does it change based on the area? What are the reactions that you guys are usually getting when you're teaching these lesson plans?
I think it changes based on the engagement level of the audience in general. I mean, it's taught mostly either fifth graders or middle school. And sometimes the fifth graders are really engaged, sometimes they're not, which is okay, right? Because we're still all kids, so it's okay. But it really just depends on I don't know. I think some of the older kids definitely take it a little bit better, and the teachers are pretty open and accepting to providing a space for us to, I don't know, teach or do some of these things. So that's definitely very helpful. But I feel like a lot of the kids are pretty interested though, because sometimes it's things they haven't heard about, or they haven't heard about the different ways that it impacts the Asian American community. So
Yeah, I think it definitely like varies. At first, I thought maybe the age group, but now that I think about it, I think it depends on like each individual student and like their interest in that topic, because I think the first school we taught in Los Angeles, it was our first time, so we were very nervous, but I feel like a lot of the kids were not very focused because the presentation itself was not very interactive, but at the same time, I feel like they were kind of forced to be there. They're just sitting, listening, kind of bored, looking somewhere else. So that was sort of disappointing to see from our perspective, but like as time went on, I think we got a little better at teaching in general. And so this other school in Massachusetts, I think, or yeah, that group of high schoolers, I'm pretty sure they already had knowledge of AAPI, and I think their class was about like AAPI history or like POC history, etc. And so they already knew a lot of the stuff we were teaching them about, and they were a lot more engaged. So this was over Zoom, but they had a lot to say over chat. And then the same school in LA, but fifth grade, they were, I feel like, very engaged, but most of the Asian kids were more engaged than the others. And so that is like when it's different, like they want to know more, and some kids just don't really care because they don't know anything. And like another school in Berkeley, we taught, I think they were fifth graders. But there was like 2 or 3 kids that like kept raising their hands and they were sitting up, but then there was 5 kids with their heads down, and they're still kids, so they have a lot of time to figure things out, but it varies a lot. And I don't think that it's really just about age. I think it's about one's own interest and knowledge.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Siwoo. I felt like the Massachusetts group was really well engaged with the material. They were really open to like learning new stuff and re-educating themselves and learning the API history. So I think it was a great lesson. And I also think that we did improve with teaching over time. We got more audience retention. People seemed more engaged with the content. Like before, they would just sit and stare at us for like maybe like an hour and that would be it. And at the end, they wouldn't even ask any questions. But over time, people started asking questions, and we really got to engage with our audience and the other students across the country, which was really great.
I love to hear that there's been such a range that you've taught. It's super cool that you've done high school. I was thinking, like, from my perspective, that would be a successful age group. But was that the only high school group you've taught? Just the one?
I think so. Is it?
I remember.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we've mostly done more middle
middle
school.
school, fifth grade
Middle school
through middle
class.
school.
Yeah, the first one we presented to was middle school, and that one was, yeah, again, it all depends on how much practice we had. It was our very first time presenting. It was also in person, which I
In
think,
person, in like an auditorium too.
yeah, it was an
Yeah.
auditorium. We had like microphones to pass around. It was a little stressful, but
Gotcha.
I think it was a nice learning experience. Yeah.
No, and I'm also glad that you guys pushed through, because you could have said, "Oh no, this first class was a disaster. Like it didn't go as we wanted it to," but you all continued to do this lesson plan, fifth grade, middle school, high school. That's awesome. Like I think it's amazing that you pushed through. You trusted that this was the right thing to do. And as you said, even though like some kids might not be engaged, the few kids that were, though, that you made an impact, and that makes they can then go on and inform themselves, inform their friends. Even if it's just a few people in the class, like you probably made a tremendous impact on what they want to go and research further. So, but I am curious with this range of ages, whether it be during your lesson plan or other speaking engagements. I have noticed personally. I mean, I'm 23. I'm not that young, but I do notice that some people, when it comes to work, because I'm on the younger side, they might. I feel like they maybe might take me less seriously. So I'm wondering, and I'll start with Siwoo because I know you're the only person I haven't directly started with. I'm sorry, it's because you're the corner, not right next to me in these Zoom squares. But Siwoo, I'll start with you and ask: have you ever been in a situation where you feel like your younger age makes people maybe take you less seriously?
I definitely have. To answer that question, I feel like with my work with the group, not really. I feel like the adults that engage with us are a lot more supportive. Um, I think that people take me more seriously, but in other contexts, I feel like with current events and just talking about myself or other situations in general, I think I've had a lot of adults look down on me. They don't really say it outwardly, but I can definitely feel it in the way they respond to me, look at me, and dealing with me. But I think definitely yes. My parents also sometimes I feel like they don't really take me as seriously because I am 14, and when it comes to stuff like um my safety, they have a lot more to say, but my own identity with like gender, sexual orientation, I feel like this is a lot more common in API communities, families. It's not really talked about, and when I feel like I have to talk about it, I'm a little more nervous. I kind of hesitate because I feel like my opinion, my perspective is not, I guess, taken into consideration. And a lot of older people say, like age is important because older people like have more experience. We know a lot more than you do, but I feel like in some cases it's not really true. I feel like age isn't really anything if you don't like mature or evolve or educate yourself. And so I've had a lot of moments where not just my parents, but other adults like my friends' parents or teachers or just strangers in general, like when I try to bring up a topic that's controversial or a little more serious, they don't take me seriously. And sometimes the conversation is shut down, which makes me really frustrated and upset because, I feel like younger people have a lot more to say about some of the topics. And I feel like because of social media, some of us are a little more educated than like some adults, but it all varies. And I just wish people would take us more seriously because, we care a lot more than adults think we do. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also definitely think that's definitely fair. Some adults, yeah, within API Youth Rising, I feel like they do take it seriously just because they want the youth perspective and they know that we've worked hard and understand these issues. So I feel like we're taken seriously within that realm, especially because we do label ourselves as a youth group, because we are a youth group. But yeah, I do feel like at school sometimes, or I don't know, just interacting with adults in general, yeah, sometimes you're not taken as seriously just because of your age. You're like, oh, well, you don't understand. Like if you try, especially if you try to talk about more current events, and politics, political things, sometimes you're like, oh, well, you don't understand this. I don't know, whatever. But I feel like youth actually might understand it a bit more as we have fresher mindsets, haven't been influenced by as many things as some adults may have been, or we have more because of social media, but that's a whole other discussion I'm not going to get into right now. But I feel like we definitely have a bit more of a fresher mindset in terms of building our own opinions and strengthening our own opinions. And we are less conditioned to agree with other adults and more conditioned to find our own way and find what we believe in. So I think that makes us maybe even a little more reliable in some cases. But I feel like you should take youth seriously because we are the future. We're what's going to lead the charge ahead. Where I guess future job holders, politicians, CEOs, all that. So, there's a lot of change we're going to make. So it's important to hear our opinions now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with, yeah, Mina and Siwoo. I've definitely been in situations, not with the org, where I've been looked down on. They don't say it out loud, but I can definitely tell from their body language and other clues. But I do feel like people who listen to the org do respect us when we're speaking to them. So yeah, and I think but it is really important for us to amplify other youth voices and youth orgs so they can get their opinion out there as well.
No, I totally agree. And thank you all for sharing. And also, just for the record, I would trust any of the three of you way more as president than the former president that we had. So take with that whatever you want to take away with that. But age doesn't necessarily mean more experience or more knowledge. So if you're on the ballot, I would have checked off any one of you three. And changing tides, we've seen some roadblocks. There have been times where it seems like we're fighting like an uphill battle. We're unsure what next steps to take. So I'm curious for AAPI Youth Rising, what are some of the roadblocks you faced in getting this off the ground?
I think, I'll take this one, but I guess probably just sort of learning how to work together in a group setting more, knowing that although I may be like really good friends with you, sometimes there are certain, I guess, sort of topics or things you might not be interested in. Just learning how to work with other people in general has definitely been not one of the biggest, kind of a roadblock, but just more of a challenge to figure out, right? Also structuring a group, thinking about like what we want to do in the future, coming up with projects, just organizing things in general, like executive functioning is not the strong suit of a bunch of 13, 14-year-olds. I don't know. So it's a little harder to do that, but I think we've learned a lot of important and useful skills through this journey, but it's definitely been all that. Also, keeping up with current events and having to interact on social media, having to and keep up with the news about what's going on in our country, because as an advocacy group, we need to know what's happening, but keeping up with the news it's a little damaging at times, like having to learn about all the new hate incidents, mass shootings, I don't know, Roe v. Wade overturning, all that, having to keep up with that and continue to learn more about it and how it might impact you and the communities around you and the communities who you love so much, then it can be quite harmful sometimes. So that one's definitely another big challenge we have to overcome. But
Siwoo or Max, is there anything else that you guys could think of for roadblocks, or does that about cover it?
I think that covers it. Yeah. Especially the part where Mina said structuring the group. I think it was hard, especially because we are 14, we're still in school. We don't really have a lot of experience with jobs and roles like in social groups, I guess, outside of school. And I think that was really hard for us, just like communicating with each other, trying to put our ideas into one pit and trying to make something up that satisfies everyone. I think we recently got over that one, but that was one of the problems that we had But yeah.
So you do have to stay up to date, and I mean that's tough for everyone. I mean, keeping up with the news, it's so damaging. Like it could really damage your mental health, especially because, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the news lately has been absolutely horrible. And even in general, usually the headlines that you hear about are going to be the sad ones rather than the things that are going great in the world. So for you all, how are you able to keep composure? How are you able to decompress? Like what do you do when you feel overwhelmed with all the news that you have to keep up with for this group?
I'm not really sure. It's a little bit of a hard, I guess, hard thing to do to keep calm under very intense circumstances. Even in California, where it might not be directly affecting you or your community, it's still something that you have to know about, an event that did happen in the world, lives that might have been lost, and lives that could have been saved. Many different, there are many different factors that I guess sort of you have to think about. And yeah, apparently, there was one statistic I heard, don't quote me on this one, but bad news does spread like 5 times faster than good news or something. Because if it's good news, then you're like, oh, that's nice. But people probably know about it, so I don't have to, like, I don't know, share it with anyone or anything. But if it's bad news, it's like, oh no, people need to learn about it. I'm going to share it with as many people as I possibly can. So then there's ends up being a lot of bad news out there, which is it's a nice thing to have, because you're being educated and up to date on everything and keeping on top of it. But it's quite saddening at times, because it is bad news, right? So I'm not really sure about how I specifically deal with. I think I just sort of think about it a lot, and then it goes away. But the news cycle as well is very like fast, and sort of like, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And so even if you could just got over one thing that might have happened, there's going to be another tragic thing for you to learn about the very next day. So it's a whole process. But I feel like just decompressing for a little bit, or not checking the news for a while, not watching the news or seeing that, can be very, very helpful, and very nice at times. Yeah.
How about you,
Yeah.
Max?
So I definitely agree with Mina. Siwoo and I do social media for API Rising, or I previously did it. Siwoo does it still. And I think it's definitely really important to take breaks for your mental health. Just like looking at all the feed and endlessly scrolling can be really bad for you. So I definitely feel like just taking a break, stepping back for a bit, can definitely help you in a massive capacity.
Personally, for me, what I do is I really like to talk about it. For instance, recently Roe v. Wade has been overturned. I've talked to a lot of my female friends about it. But then when things like API hate crimes happen, I like talking to my AAPI friends about it. And so whatever happens, I kind of vent to let it out. But I feel like some things, some incidents, like I guess hate crimes and like Roe v. Wade, it's happened once, and it affects people, but at the same time there are a lot of things that like are constantly happening, getting worse, like climate change. And that's like really stressful, because like one person can't fix all that. I mean, of course, one person can start like a wave or a chain reaction, but it's really hard. And especially just because of my age, and social media and news, like things like that, like constantly pop up. And yes, like Max said, it is important to take a break, but I feel like sometimes it's better to keep educating yourself, even though it's hard. I mean, it's very stressful, but everybody has like different ways of um, getting rid of that stress, easing yourself. But I feel like things like that are very hard. Um, Even like talking about it, can, I don't even know at this point. Like it's very difficult. It's very confusing. Everybody has different ways of coping. Everybody has different ways of reaching that sort of news. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I hear everything you guys are saying. As long as you have some type of way to take a step back or further educate yourself, I agree. Sometimes you want to read more to see if you could fully understand the situation, but sometimes you just need to step away. But I'm glad that you all seem to have some sort of outlet and continue to seek those types of outlets, because I hope you continue to do this work and it doesn't burn you out or stress you out too much. So please keep fighting the good fight. But with that, I'm curious, how can listeners support you, and what are you currently working on that you could use our support?
Yeah, so that lesson plan, that's definitely, if you know any educators who might be interested, we are still scheduling times to, I guess, sort of present that, and we're hopefully maybe working on a video version of it this summer, so that's coming up soon. But yeah, you can, I guess, check out our pledge. You can follow us on Instagram. Email us if you have any ideas. Also, if you would know any youth, Asian American youth who would be interested in joining the group as well, or any allies, that would be excellent. We are accepting new members, new people. And yeah, just learn. I think another thing you can do if you want to support the API community at large, learn more about us, learn more about the laws that have affected us, the different things that will affect us. Also, yeah, be aware of misinformation, because it's everywhere. So, be careful. But yeah, I think just if you want to get involved in their group, you can get involved, and just stay kind to people. That's a big one. And yeah.
Is there anything, and then Siwoo or Max, is there anything else moving forward that we should be aware of? I know that's Mina mentioned all the stuff that you are currently working on, and she hinted at some of the stuff that might be coming, but what else is coming in the future?
For the org in general, or
Yeah, for the organization, like what can we expect from next for you guys?
I think next we are trying to film the lesson plan to organize it into a video to distribute to classrooms around the US, so we don't have to be there to teach it every time. I think that's one of the big things, and I'm going to be responsible for starting that.
Cool. Anything else that we didn't hit on? There's a couple of quick fire fun questions I want to ask you all. But is there anything else that anyone wants to mention? We're good? Okay. Cool. So I have 6 quick little questions. I'll start with Mina on the first one, and then see you, and then Max. What is your favorite place to travel?
I don't know. This is hard. I am not totally sure. Favorite place to travel. I went to Hawaii. That was fun. Yeah, I really like it there. Yeah.
Cool.
Personally, I do not like traveling. I'm kind of like I want to stay home person, because I feel like traveling is kind of a hassle. But there are a lot of places that I want to go to, like more of Europe, South America, etc. But I like traveling back to Korea, because that's where my family is. That's where I was born, and so I like being connected with South Korea. So yeah.
And Max, favorite place to travel?
That's a hard one too. I've been to so many places, but I guess, and I haven't really been to places twice. But I guess I agree with Mina with Hawaii or somewhere. I also really liked going to Asian countries. I've been to Japan and China, and those were they were in culture, they were beautiful, and also in nature, they were also really amazing. So I think it was either one of those two.
Gotcha. We'll go the other way around now. So Max, what is a skill you don't have but wish you did have?
I wish I was better at cooking, maybe. So my grandmother was really great at cooking, so I really want to preserve her cultural cooking through generation.
I need to think about that one. I feel like a skill, maybe being more organized, like time-wise, and also like physically, because my room is really dirty, especially because it's summer and I'm just like staying in my room. if I'm not outside. So yeah, I wish I was more organized.
I wish I also wish I was more organized. You don't want to see my room. I have my camera purposefully tilted upwards so you can't see. But it is not good in here. So yeah, probably physical organization, time organization as well. Maybe reading fast. I don't read very fast. It's a little bit hard, and sometimes I'll read it and then I like am reading it, but I'm thinking about something else and then I don't understand. That's really not, I find that one very irritating. It happens to me all the time. So probably to get rid of that, and no more procrastination as well. Yeah. Yeah.
All of you, good luck in high school with the organization side. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be kind of tough if you're with your time organization. So good luck. And also, Mina, the part about reading, I will literally read a whole page, and I'll be thinking about a TV show I just watched, and then I'll have to reread the page again. So I feel you on that one for sure. Going back around, Mina, if you have an AAPI role model, who is it and why?
I think it would probably be I'm not really sure, probably my mom and my grandma. Yeah, because my grandma came here. Yeah, my grandma and grandpa, my mom, because they came here to this country and they didn't know or any English. They had to learn everything and had to make their own way in America in a new environment, totally new place in the 70s. And then yeah, and she had to find her own way and she totally built up everything that we have today. So probably they're probably my biggest role models. But in terms of like a big API historical figure, maybe Grace Lee Boggs. She was really cool. Yeah, she did a lot of advocacy in Detroit, and she advocated for like her whole life. And she was like 100 and something when she died, I think, but she was even to that day still speaking out and talking about issues that impacted her and her community. So yeah.
My AAPI role model, not very historical or very touching, like Mina said, but I personally, my API role model is a singer and her name is Mitski. I really like her. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
I really like her because, she really just puts, the experience out there in some of her songs. She's very confident. And I feel like she helps a lot of people through her music. She's helped me, definitely, for sure. And yeah, that is my API role model.
Max, AAPI role model, and why?
My answer is gonna be super similar to Mina. So I guess like real life, like tangible, it'd definitely be like my parents and my grandparents and my family in general. And then like historical, I really admire Grace Lee Boggs too, but if I had to pick another one, it'd definitely be like Yuri Kochiyama. I really admire her work and for API people, and she was a great activist in general.
I'll have to read up on Grace Lee Boggs. Yeah, I'll have to read up on that one because I don't know enough about her work. So thank you for telling me about her. I just read up on Yuri Kochiyama. Love her work. She's a huge inspiration to me. And Siwoo Mitski, I've heard of her. Her music is definitely a specific type of music. It's a specific genre. I don't know. I haven't been in the mood to like love her music yet, but I understand the appeal. And I know it's helped a lot of my friends out too. Like her music's helped a lot of my friends through tough times as well. So that's so funny that you listened to Mitski. That's so wild to me. Max, starting with you. Superhero. If you were a superhero, what would your power be?
I think definitely be either teleportation or flight. I just like just being able to go anywhere I want would be like super amazing.
Cool.
Same with Max. I feel like I'd want to teleport because I really do not like the process of getting to places. Like, I don't know, sometimes I can be a very lazy, procrastinating person. Don't like being in the car for such a long time. And I don't really like walking for a long time. running, etc. So teleportation would be cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna double down on that one or triple down on that one. Teleportation would be great. I also don't like being in the car. I had to do I was in Tennessee and Chicago, but it was like plane 4 days, plane 2 days back home, plane 4 days, plane, and now I'm here. And then tomorrow I'm going on a 7-hour car trip to LA. So, I don't like traveling. It's a hassle. It's not very fun. So teleportation would be amazing. That would be,
Gotcha.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm one of the weirdos that actually kind of likes the airport. I don't know. Yeah. I'm sorry. If I completely lost all of your trust or respect, I understand. I'm sorry. I kind of like the airport. But this is a question for all three of you. If you could come to an agreement, if AAPI Youth Rising were to create a podcast, what would the title of it be? It could just be AAPI Youth Rising, or it could be the Mina Show. I don't know. Just
It's a group effort. I mean,
right. Totally
I
kidding.
did start it, but I definitely would have never been able to do everything on my own. So no Mina Show. That one's definitely
We
out.
could call it the Maxwell Show too.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
nice.
No, definitely wouldn't be. I don't think I could run a podcast solo either.
Who would be our host? Actually, it should be the name of the host. So who is our most podcasty member?
Anna.
Yeah. Anna would be the one to make a podcast. It's a little strange because she's not here right now. But if you're listening to this right now, Anna, you would be the podcast person. So the Anna Show featuring
Cool.
AAPI Youth Rising. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I could see that. Yeah, for sure. Well, Anna, I look forward to your podcast if and when it comes out. Max, good luck on running the video portion of your teaching lesson. And to all of you, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I loved meeting you when you were in LA. I was blown away by your work. You were all both amazing. You were all amazing on stage when you received your award. I was a little jealous that I didn't get one, but it's okay. You were very deserving of it. Very much looking forward to everything you all do in the future. But again, thank you for your time and keep doing the good work that you do.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
it's been fun talking to you. It's been one of
Thank you again to AAPI Youth Rising and Mina, Siwoo, and Max for joining me and talking about their organization, what's next, their own experiences, and just everything that we were able to chat about. For me to hear the perspective of these ultimately they're kids who are about to go into high school and talking about, their experiences with racism, talking about the way Roe v. Wade being overturned, how that impacted them. It's something that we all are kind of aware about, but to hear how it impacts these kids is really unbelievable. And I think it's pretty unbelievable to have to know that they have to experience this, and this is the future that they're going to be trying to correct when they're adults. And I know that I trust in that generation. I don't know if I'm considered to be the same generation as them, but it's inspiring to hear what they have to say and what they're fighting for, no matter how young they are. But with that said, if you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe to our show for episodes that release on every other Tuesday. Give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to support our podcast and help us grow, you can do so with a donation to the link at the bottom of the episode description. To hear more about Changing Tides, follow us on Instagram at LTSC_Changing Tides, or check out our website, thechangingtides.org. Let's continue to change the tides on mental health.